He barely finished the second game.
Well, I, for one, after covering 9 rounds of Magic and this late at night, very hungry, waiting for dinner, I am excited at the prospect of a long, drawn-out affair.
Yeah? Well, see, I think Maggiano's will still be open once we get done.
Let's hope.
If you like mediocre Italian, I got just the place for you.
If you like bad Italian food.
Which was my dinner last night. But hey, we're going to start with a Swamp and a Gauntlet Shrine here from Schulz. Sacher with an Overgrown Tomb. And we'll see if he does have the Farseek, and he does with the Kessig Wolf run. So mana is online, and he is going to steal the initiative here in this first game in round 9.
And, you know, I haven't seen this matchup played out very often, but I have to say, the combination of, you know, Rakdos Return, Thragtusk, there's just a lot of good cards that Zachary has to contend with. However, Jarroth's Messenger is actually one of the better cards against Jund. So, you know, it poses a significant threat, and the Undying ability makes it difficult to deal with. So we'll see what AJ is able to muster here, because it looks like he has multiple creatures. He has multiple Huntmaster of the Fells. It looks like he has 3. He has Olivia, he has the Rakdos Return, but he doesn't have a 4th land.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to actually waste a turn far-seeking to get that 4th land, as opposed to play one and actually get a threat into the board.
So it is going to be, it looks like it's going to be Farseek time here. You see the Messenger there from Sacher. So Sacher currently is at 18. We'll get that life total updated for you guys in just a moment. Going to go down a little bit lower in a moment from a Jarroth's Messenger attack, obviously. But having to Farseek for that 4th land, not drawing it, really sucks.
If that Farseek was a land, we're going to see a Huntmaster come into play. His life total goes back up to 20, and he has a potential Wolf blocker to deal with the Jarroth's Messenger. He could also try to flip the Huntmaster next turn, so it can, you know, block and trade with the Jarroth's Messenger once it comes back. So you're basically just netting out. We're 1-for-1ing with removal there. So kind of unfortunate for AJ there, but now we're going to see another Jarroth's Messenger from Zachary and a 4th land to go along with it.
Yeah, so AJ is certainly under the gun now. He's going down to 13. He's going to untap. I mean, even if he does peel Bonfire is not very good right now.
No.
Because it would just turn those Messengers into 4/3s, and Sacher would lose 4 life and go down to 11. So Bonfire is not the thing he wants to draw. I think Huntmaster of the Fells is a good start, though.
It's a good start. He has multiple, so he can kind of try to clog up the board a little bit. Oh, it looks like the first Messenger trigger was missed, so AJ's still at 15. And, you know, AJ has a Scavenging Ooze into play, which works well with Undying, so you can make sure that those creatures don't come back into play. Unfortunately, he just doesn't have enough mana to kind of get that trick going right now.
Yeah. So, Schulz is going to tap some mana here. Maybe we start with a Sign in Blood, perhaps?
Looks like a Doomblade.
Doomblade's going to take care of that Huntmaster of the Fells, so here is nicely a Chapel 3 mana. Liliana available to take care of the Wolf.
Wow. So very, very good start here for Zachary. He's putting a lot of pressure on. AJ's going to drop to 11, and Zachary still has that Liliana available to play.
Scary thing for Zachary, however, is that a Thragtusk is going to do a lot of the damage that is done if AJ is able to muster a 5th land and has a Thragtusk in his hand. But as you mentioned, he's got multiple Huntmasters to buy some time and get some life back here.
Yeah. So, oh, well, he drew a 5th land here, so part of the puzzle. He needed that. So now Huntmaster can buy him some turn, gain him some life back. And then if he top decks like Thragtusk, maybe that can help him out. Although, at this point, I wonder whether or not you try to just Rakdos Return Zachary, deal with the Liliana, and empty his hand. I don't know how many. I'm not sure how many cards Zach has left in his hand, but if you could empty his mitt, it might be worth it to just do this, drop to 5, and then play the Huntmaster next turn.
Yeah, I mean, the question you got to ask yourself is how much do you care about the Liliana? I think you care more about the cards in hand, of course.
Yeah, it's really about the cards in hand, but the bonus of getting rid of the Liliana could be helpful too. But just not sure many. Zachary used 2 spells last turn, so not sure what else he has. But so it looks like AJ's just going to play the Huntmaster here, gain 2 life, go up to 13, and get a couple more blockers.
All right, so Schulz is going to untap those lands and those 2 Messengers. Sacher sitting at 13. Schulz going to draw a card here. He does have that Liliana in play. Doesn't even really consult his hand. Looks like he's just moving right to the attack step here, giving away pretty much no information. Now he's going to take a look at the grip.
The question is here, if he does attack, what is AJ's best block here?
I think you just block them both.
If you block both, they're both going to come back as 4/3s, and you're still going to take 2. So you're taking 4 total. So you're going to go to 9. But at least you kill one side of the...
Yeah.
Because I just don't think he has enough mana to deal with the... Oh, wow. I don't think he has enough mana to try the Scavenging Ooze trick.
So what it looked like to me is that he didn't block at all. Is that he just took it, went down to 5. Obsidian came in. So now you got the drain and the brain. Now Liliana's moving up. For me, if I'm Sacher there, I understand what he wants to do, and you mentioned it with Scavenging Ooze, which is he wants to be able to make it so that when he does block, he can Scavenging Ooze them away, not have him dying. But now Obsidian has just really blown up this plan in a big way.
Yeah, I don't know how many cards Zachary has in his hand, but I think ideally AJ wanted a Rakdos Return for 3 there and then play Huntmaster, because again, I think it just gives him more options to sort of try to stabilize. Now he's a really tough spot.
Now he's just discarding Rakdos' return. Yeah, Schulz is going to discard a land. Now there goes Obsidian.
So AJ's in a tough spot here. Obsidian doesn't really have a Putrefy to deal with it yet, or a Tragic Slip potentially.
So the reason I like blocking with both guys is because it turns on Bonfire off the top to be able to take care of them. Now I might just be playing too much towards Bonfire, but by taking this damage and going down to 5, he would have gotten down to 7. So still, you haven't dealt with like the primary problem, which is Messenger. At some point, those messengers are going to deal you 2 more points. The thinking is that Scavenging Ooze will prevent that from happening, as he does draw a Bonfire of the Damned this turn. The thinking is that it can prevent that from happening, but it just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't feel that likely to me for whatever reason. But we'll see. We'll see what AJ comes up with, because he did have him on Bonfire, and now he can't do it.
If Zachary doesn't have much going on here in terms of gas left in his hand, it's potential. There is a potential here for AJ to maybe pull this off. But yeah, I'm with you. It's definitely going to be really tough for him here, because you have that Obsidian now coming into play. Obviously, I think if your line probably won't matter because of the Obsidian, because even if he does Bonfire there, the Obsidian still probably ends up killing AJ.
Yeah.
But either way, I agree with you. I think maybe it's a little too greedy to try to get value out of your Scavenging Ooze at this point. Because what do you really do here? Now you're forced to attack Liliana, so you can't lose one of your creatures. So you can You're going to have to block with your Scavenging Ooze anyway, or I guess you can still afford to take 3. You're going to have to block Obsidian, because that is definitely coming in.
You can't afford. I mean, Obsidian's going to come in and drain AJ down to 3.
Yeah.
With the drain when it comes in, so he's going to go down to 3, and then Schulz is going to come over with a bunch of creatures. He's going to attack with both of those messengers and that Obsidian. So
there is
it's going to be an issue.
There's a Huntmaster in the graveyard, so he can get 1 activation of the Scavenging Ooze before the damage is dealt. But he's not going to be able to activate Scavenging Ooze and kill the Undying effect, or stop the Undying effect from the Dross Messenger if he blocks with the Scavenging Ooze. So that's the issue that he has to deal with.
And you see the frustration that he wants to kill Liliana. He realizes he can't attack and just has to pass the turn back. So obviously that's going to come in. It's going to knock Sacher down to 3. Schulz is going to move up to 24.
Yeah, I think AJ is basically hoping there that Zachary doesn't down-tick the Liliana.
Boy, he couldn't cast that fast enough. So Oblivion Ring is going to take care of Scavenging Ooze. And now I think AJ is left with basically no outs now. The Scavenging Ooze, the plan just gets blown up in a big way. He does get to make an activation here to take care of that Huntmaster that falls in his own graveyard and go up to 4. But the fact that he's not going to have blockers, assuming that the Liliana activation is going to go down to make it an Edict effect, should finish this one off here for Mr. Schulz.
Yeah, as long as Zachary decides to down-tick his Liliana,
Yep.
it should be game over.
And he is reaching, and he is going to do that. There goes your wolf token.
Yeah, because...
And he says attack, and
there's
that's
nothing
it.
AJ can do.
So Zachary Schulz is going to win game number 1 with black-white control over AJ Sacher playing Jund. It's funny because we think about these kind of... it's a mid-range mirror for all intents and purposes. And, one of these decks has red and green cards and has Thraktusk and Huntmaster and Olivia, as you mentioned, and Schulz has Geralf's Messenger and Desecration Demon, but he's up a game, and he was in the driver's seat the whole time.
I mean, it was really just double Geralf's Messenger, because if you remember back to Pro Tour Seattle or Portland, I think it was, where it was basically Modern, and you had a lot of people playing Jund. So Team Channel Fireball, they all had those Jund decks. Some of them played Kitchen Finks, some of them played Geralf's Messenger. The key was, though, those Undying creatures or those Persist creatures are good again in Jund. I think that philosophy applies here too. It's just, particularly Geralf's Messenger, David Choa had a deck with 4 Geralf's Messenger in his Jund deck.
Yep.
That card's very good against Jund, be it Modern or in Standard. It's still a very good card because it's aggressive and it's difficult to deal with. So I think you just saw it there. Double Geralf's Messenger was what won him the game. the rest of his deck is largely irrelevant. It's
Yeah.
really just those Dross Messengers. Obviously, AJ could have navigated around those cards had he had maybe a little more mana to work with and had a little more time. And cards like Oblivion Ring and Opposite helped close things out for Zachary. But it was really the Dross Messengers that did the heavy lifting for him in that match.
We can't forget how good of a card Dross Messenger is. It hasn't really shown up much over the past couple of months with Jund and Junk Reanimator's dominance and zombies kind of being put on the back burner, but this is an incredible threat at 3 mana, assuming your deck can cast it. We'll take a look at the sideboard here. Sacher is going to be on the play for game number 2. He's got an Acidic Slime, 2 Underworld Connections, a Doomblade, 2 Golgari Charm, 1 Tragic Slip, 3 Liliana the Veil, 2 Duress, 1 Rakdos Return, and 2 Pillar of Flame. So we can just go one by one here. I actually like Acidic Slime in this matchup because I think you can assume that your opponent is going to be boarding in their own Underworld Connections, but we also saw Oblivion Ring, so it's going to have a target. 2 Underworld Connections, we're grindy. I think it's worth bringing in. Doomblade, not so much. Most of the creatures are going to be black in this matchup. Golgari Charm, it's okay. There are enchantments to be killed. -1/-1's not really going to come up very much. And the regeneration ability, I don't think it's going to matter very much either, so I can see at least one of those coming in. Slip, I kind of like if you want more removal. 3 Liliana the Veil, I think that's the question, if you actually want that effect, because I feel like it was okay from Schultz's side, but when you're playing against a deck that has Dross Messenger, Liliana doesn't seem very appealing. 2 Duress, it's alright, but I don't really like Duress in these kind of mid-range mirrors. That Rakdos Return, though, I like a lot. And the big one here is Pillar of Flame, because Pillar of Flame is obviously quite good against Messenger, which is what beat AJ in that first game. But if we're playing against a deck that, again, has Desecration Demon, has Restoration Angel, has Vampire Nighthawk, has Disciple Boss, and Obsidat. So can you really afford to bring in Pillar of Flame and how narrow it is?
I think you want it because, again, it's also a potential way to deal with Liliana the Veil if they down tick it. If you can't, like in that situation, AJ would have loved to have it be able to just Pillar Liliana and play a blocker. But again, I think that because of how good Dross Messenger is against AJ, I think he needs to kind of hedge a little bit and bring in those Pillar Flames. I don't think they're ever dead. He could obviously always go to the face with them. Sometimes it's not ideal, but in general, though, I think it's worth bringing in.
All right. What do we got for Schulz?
Schulz has some interesting options. Looking at his main deck, let's start with what he wants to take out. He's got, I think all his creatures are probably something, I don't think he wants to board out any of his creatures, you know, Messenger, Angel, Restoration Angel, Desecration Demon, Vampire Nighthawk, Disciple, Obsidat. I think they're all fine threats against Jund. He's got 4 copies of Sign of Blood, which obviously he wants to keep in, 2 Tragic Slip, 2 Oblivion Ring, 2 Doomblade. I think Liliana, again, is fine in this matchup. Cards that I don't love, I don't like the 2 Mutilates, I don't like the 2 Victim of the Nights, I don't like the Ultimate Price, the 1 Ultimate Price, and I don't like the 1 Blind Obedience.
Yeah.
So if I were Zachary, I'd think about taking out those 6 cards, and looking at his sideboard, what could he bring in here? Lifebane Zombie, I think it's a fine threat, and I also like the fact that it can take Thragtusk, it can take Huntmaster of the Fells, so it could take Scavenger Group potentially. So I like bringing that in. I like bringing in 2 copies of Underworld Connection. Again, this is kind of a grindy matchup, so I kind of like bringing those cards in. He has Vampire Nighthawk and Obsidat to sort of gain life, so he can recoup some of the life he lost. So that's 3 cards. He's got 3 copies of Duress, which I'm not sure you really want to bring Duress in against Jund. I know there's some decks that do. Not really sure you want to be in that direction because a lot of times it just comes down to people stripping each other's hands. I think you just want to, again, it's more of a haymaker match, so you don't want to top deck a Duress late in the game. You'd rather top deck a threat. So I think the cards like Dross Messenger, maybe another Liliana, and maybe a Vampire Nighthawk. Maybe he wants to just bring in more threats and just force AJ to kind of deal with him that way. So, yeah, in my opinion, I'd probably board in those 6 cards for the 6 removal spells it is in his deck.
Well, we are going to see what both players are going to do here. Looks like Schulz is taking 1 mulligan, down to at least 6 here. Sacher looks pretty happy with his 7. Again, he is going to be on the play here. Down a game, but plenty of time to try to get back in this matchup. Again, you know, I think we see a wildly different game there, too, if he doesn't have to Farseek for his 4th land and just has a 4th land, so he can start just dropping Huntmaster of the Fells. But that was in the past. We are in the present. Both players with some tap lands, and we are going to begin game number 2.
So AJ loses with Overgrown Tomb, and it looks like he has that Farseek.
God draw.
The God draw. Zachary leads with an Orzhov Guildgate. Looks like he has a Mutavault.
Not the God draw.
Not the ideal land when your deck has multiple copies of Dross Messenger in it. But,
So if you're AJ, you got to be thrilled because now you know Messenger's not coming, and you've already, you have the initiative, and it's only getting further now.
Yeah.
So you have to be absolutely thrilled as he draws an Olivia Voldaren for the turn. You already see a Thragtusk over there as well, so he's doing well.
I would drop this Olivia into place so quickly.
Make him pass the test.
There's what can really deal with it? There's not that many cards that Black-White has to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, you can't ultimate price it. You can't
Doomblade
it. Obviously, Victim of the Night doesn't work there, so.
Which was the draw step for the turn.
But you can't even cast, so. Oh, he does have a swamp.
Have a swamp, yeah.
Interesting that he led with the. Well, maybe he doesn't have triple black.
Yeah. So, if AJ doesn't have a play there for whatever reason, he could maybe fire up a Mutavault or something like that. So
looks like we have a Pithing Needle, though, so that is a potential answer to Olivia.
Right. It doesn't stop it being a 3/3.
It's a 3/3 flyer, so.
We'll get confirmation on what that Pithing Needle is naming. Likely going to be Olivia, but we just do want to make sure. Pillar Flame is the draw here. It is naming Olivia, which we'll get in the red zone. Knocks Schulz, we believe, down to 17. Schulz has another Pithing Needle in his hand as well. And Sacher's going to play an Overgrown Tomb. I think we're going to see a 5/3 gain 5 life in just a moment, but I'm wrong.
Well,
that's way better than a 5/3.
It's another thing he can use Pithing Needle on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, AJ's going to get a little value out of it.
Yeah.
So. I don't think Zachary can win the game of Pithing Needle cards after they're already in play. He's going to have to try to get something going on here. He drew an Obsidat, which is, a start, but again...
so far away from Obsidat, though.
I think he might be able to drop a Nighthawk and Needle this turn, which isn't that bad. Nighthawk can block and kill Olivia, and then the Needle will stop Garrick from getting out of control. So, again, not the worst thing right now. He still has that Obsidat. Obsidat can kind of start bringing Zachary back into this.
Yeah, he's going to need a white and a black mana for it, though. 2 Mutavaults in play. Sacher's going to draw his card. You see the Pillar of Flame. We were wondering if he'd board it in. Draw Scavenging Ooze. Did board in the Pillar just to be able to be good against Messenger.
So let's see here. Does AJ just want to Pillar and Tragic Slip that Nighthawk and attack for 6 here? Or does he just want to say, okay, I'll lose my Olivia. It doesn't really matter. It's just a 3/3 flyer. And I'll just play a Thragtusk here. Probably doesn't want to waste 2 removal spells on just a Nighthawk.
Yeah, just a Nighthawk. Yeah, and I don't like that. And I think he comes to that conclusion as well. He's going to turn both of his guys sideways. That Beast Token and Olivia Voldaren. Nighthawk, you can trade if you want. It's your choice.
Yeah, I think Zachary's at the point now where he really kind of just wants to stem the bleeding a little bit and just kind of get into a position where he can get Obsidat into play and start regaining some life. But here comes a Thragtusk, which is going to be very difficult for him to deal with. I think he has, he does have the Victim of the Night. So he can deal with one side of the Thragtusk.
Yeah.
And he drew a Godless Shrine, so he's a little bit closer to casting Obsidat eventually.
Godless Shrine going to come into play tapped. Interesting the block there with the Vampire Nighthawk. You have the option between the Beast Token or the Olivia. I think he blocks the Beast Token because, if you leave the one Olivia in play, it shuts off further copies.
Yes.
So, makes sense on the block there. But there is, of course, with that as a choice because, if you block the Olivia, then you leave the Beast Token in play, which is something you can't Victim of Night.
Definitely.
If you draw another one. So, there's certainly a decision to be made there as here comes the 5/3 and the 3/3 into the red zone. Schulz is going to go reaching for mana. Looks like we're going to see that Victim of Night that you did mention take care of the front half of Thragtusk.
So, front half goes away. AJ's left with Tragic Slip, Pillar of Flames, and he does have another threat in Scavenging Ooze, which can get pretty big. Can become at least a 4/4 now. There's a Vampire Nighthawk and a Thragtusk in the graveyards, respectively.
I think we're going to see another Pithing Needle. I'm in here.
Unfortunately, Zachary only has 2. So
after the damage is done, slow it down. Blood Crypt going to come into play tap. Sacher sitting with a Pillar of Flame and a Mystery card. Scavenging Ooze at the ready with 2 green mana and Overgrown Tomb and Stomping Ground for activations.
So Zachary, I believe, just has a Disciple of Bolas and Obsidat in his hand.
So he's just going to activate right now. I wonder if there's any benefit to activating now as opposed to waiting, but he's going to activate right now twice. Ooze going to move to a 4/4, take care of those creatures in the graveyard. And again, Sacher's hand is Pillar of Flame and Tragic Slip. Schulz going to draw a card. He's looking for a black mana to get that Obsidat out there.
Unfortunately, Obsidat will be able to drain AJ for 2 and block one of AJ's creatures, but it will fall to Tragic Slip, even if he does get it out there. So.
Underworld Connections, the draw there for Schulz. Doesn't look to be great in this situation. It's something that you'd much rather cast on turn 3, not when you're facing down 3 rather large creatures and have to pay life to draw cards.
I think we might see Activate Mutavault, play Disciple, sacrifice.
Yeah.
Draw 2 cards, gain 2 life. Try to get another black source.
I think you nailed it. And you can see he's not incredibly thrilled by it.
Not excited.
Yeah. So Disciple Boss is going to come into play. It's going to sacrifice that Mutavault. One other thing here, too, for Schulz is that, yes, he's going to draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. Sacher can't stop him from doing that, but Tragic Slip can just take care of the 2-1.
Yeah, and then AJ's going to be able to attack for 10. Actually, 11, because you can activate the Scavengers another time once the Disciple dies.
You see AJ, actually, so yeah, Schulz is going to go up to 15. He's going to attack for 11, put him down to 4. Pillar of him can make it, so he puts him down to 2. So, you know, this is kind of a desperate times, desperate measures ordeal, as the Mutavault's going to go away. 2 cards are going to come to Schulz's hand, and he's going to gain 2 life.
So he
found a swamp.
Found a swamp
and an
and
Orzhov
a Guildgate.
Let's see if Sacher's going to pull the trigger right away. So the thing is, he doesn't need to because Disciple's a 2-1. So he doesn't have to kill it right away this turn.
Yeah.
He can get a little more information with his with his draw step.
Like, you could always top deck a Bonfire.
Yeah. Which he didn't do this time. Drew a Farseek.
I would just get max damage in, I think, at this point.
I just want to clear that thing out of the way, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want to slip it, remove it. I want to Tragic Slip it, remove it with Scavenging Ooze, and get a max damage and actually use Pillar Flame for one of its other uses, which is just to go upstairs.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do, too. Cast the Farseek as well.
Thin out your deck a little bit. Oh, looks like he's going to play it cautiously again. I'm surprised that he's this cautious, though. It's like your opponent's tapped out. What do you think that Tragic Slip's really going to do for you? You don't have a way to trigger Morbid, so whatever creature Zachary plays is going to be able to block next turn anyway. So I don't know. I don't know if it'll cost AJ, but it might give Zachary another turn.
It looks like Zachary takes all of the damage right on the chin.
Oh, wow.
So he doesn't block either. It's kind of a strange turn there, at least from our vantage point, where Tragic Slip's not going to get used, and you're just going to take all the damage. I mean, we got a 2-1 out there. It's really not going to do very much, and Sacher's not going to cast the Farseek either. So he's just going to pass the turn back. And there comes that swamp that we knew about. Going to tap 5 mana.
All right.
I'm going to cast Obsidat here.
So now Zachary, because he didn't block last turn, he actually can turn on... Actually, no, because Pillar Flame will actually remove it from the game.
Yeah.
Right? So it won't turn on Trigger Morbid.
So we're going to remove... AJ's just going to remove cards here with Scavenging Ooze. I think just simply for good practice. We're going to remove Mutavault. Going to untap here. Sacher going to draw a card. It's not Bonfire the Damned. It is a Rootbound Crag.
So we show the life totals are correct. Zachary's at 7 here.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens here. Potentially, we're just going to see a drop to 4.
So let's see. If Sacher slips the Disciple, attacks with everything, Obsidat gets in front of Scavenging Ooze. Schulz takes 6. Goes down to 1. Pillar Flame should finish it. But now AJ has to play around Schulz having a Tragic Slip of his own.
Yep.
So that's the issue here.
And it looks like that's what AJ is going to be doing.
Wow, super conservative play. I guess if he can afford to play around Tragic Slip, he might as well. I guess is the thought process.
No, looks like he's not going to bother.
He's going to use, looks like a basic swamp for this.
Looks like he's going to cast a Tragic Slip.
Okay. Certainly reaching is always going to cast it.
I still think this plays. I'm with you. It's strange that he just wouldn't have done that last turn.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
He's going to come across sideways here.
He's exposed himself a little bit to Tragic Slip.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big deal here, where he exposes himself to Tragic Slip, because what Schulz could end up doing is he just goes block your Ozak gets in front of your beast, Tragic Slip your Scavenging Ooze. I take 3, I go down 4. And then I have an Obsidat versus your Olivia, and I've got draw steps.
So now Zachary's going to take 6, and AJ's going to be able to cast Pillar of Flames.
Boop. And there's a Pillar of Flame, and that is going to do it. So, matchup is tied between Sacher and Schulz, Jund versus Black-White Control. A little bit of conservative play there from Sacher, which, you know, I know him very well, a good friend of mine. He does err on the side of caution, where I am a lot more risky when I play, but I can certainly see it being both ways. You know, I kind of put the pedal to the metal and make my opponent have it a lot, where AJ tries to play around things a little bit more. Sometimes the caution can actually lead to giving your opponent more draw steps to get back in the game, though. And then on the flip side, if you're much more aggressive like I am, when they do have it, you kind of get owned for them having it. So, you know, there are definitely two sides to the coin.
Yeah, you don't want to be overly cautious, but I think in that kind of situation there, I think both players kind of played strangely, because obviously Zachary kind of put himself in a position where Tragic Slip got turned on to deal with Obstinate by not blocking the turn before and just not saving damage. You know, if you get an opportunity to block in that situation, knowing what your game plan is going to be, I think you have to take it. Whereas AJ kind of exposed himself to his opponent having a Tragic Slip by not sequencing things differently. So it's tough to see, you know, what the right line is. Obviously, AJ ended up winning the match, and Zachary really didn't have a way to draw out of it at a certain point. But, you know, we know that AJ is kind of a deliberate player. We kind of knew that going in. So I don't know if he necessarily made a mistake, but it's just, you know, there's a lot of decisions that he could have made maybe to kind of close things out faster. But, you know, I think he played relatively well, and just make sure that he wasn't going to lose to certain cards that maybe he was afraid Zachary could top deck.
And, you know, there's a quote out there, and, you know, you'd have to trust the read that you have in the situation. So even though something may look a little bit strange, if you have your opponent read for something and you think that they have a certain card or are playing a certain way because of it, all you can do is trust the read that you have in your opponent. You know, maybe he thought that Schulz had something there that he could play around for a little while. You know, if his read was Tragic Slip, you know, he should know to turn that read off based off of what happened on the last turn, which is Tragic Slip, your guy, I'm going to get Tragic Slip now, but maybe he's able to take him off of it for something that he picked up during the game, maybe some sort of vocal cue, or, you know, something that the way that Schulz has been playing with his hand. Who knows? I mean, a lot of my game is based off of reading my opponent when I play against them. So, you know, we have the information that we have with the cards that are in hand, so everything's a lot easier for you and I in the booth on why they wouldn't be doing something. But I mean, we've all been down there in the trenches, and, you know, things are different when you're down there versus up here in the coverage booth.
It's also not the most common deck that you're playing against. I mean, Black-White, we've been seeing it kind of grow in popularity, but I wouldn't say it's a deck that AJ might be that experienced against. You know? And that was game 2, so you don't even know what Zachary could be bringing in. So maybe that was just a position where AJ is just trying to overthinking things, because there's just so many possibilities that Zachary could have that potentially could maybe blow him out. So AJ just would rather err on the side of caution to make sure he doesn't lose to some random card he didn't even think of. So I think it's just a tough call there.
I just always find it kind of fascinating that, you know, if you're being cautious can end up costing you by giving your opponent more draw steps, and then being aggressive can end up costing you by just simply being too aggressive. Then your opponent, you just run into the trick that your opponent had, or maybe the trick that you weren't expecting, and it can result in just two very different outcomes. You know, who knows what Schulz could have peeled off the top of his deck to get back into the game.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a different situation that we saw in the prior round, where we saw Richard Nguyen maybe was a little too passive, and he should have been a little bit more aggressive. And that kind of situation it's not one of those situations where you're playing conservatively. In that particular instance, he just didn't know when he should be the aggressor and when he should be the defender. I mean, he didn't really know how to switch up the role. Whereas in AJ's situation, it was just a line that he made based on trying to get a read on his opponent. He was always the aggressor. It's just a question of should I be overly aggressive now? Should I really go for it? So I think there's a lot of different situations, a lot of different ways you can lose the game in terms of, when am I the aggressor? When am I the defender? You know, should I just try to go for it now? What do I need to play around? AJ is a pretty good player. He also has pretty good reads on people. So I'm surprised he wouldn't just kind of trust his instincts and sort of figure out what's in Zach's hand. Because, you know, a lot of times that's what a player like AJ can do that, you know. And you've seen it before where people kind of telegraph exactly what's in their hand based on their body language and everything. So let's see. Well, AJ managed to even it up, though. We're in game 3. Zachary's going to be on the play again. Let's see if he can get those Dross messengers in play. We saw AJ board in the Pillar Flames to deal with him. But
I mean, AJ feels that there's such a problem that he has to board in a card that's so narrow in Pillar Flame. Yes, it can go upstairs. That's certainly a benefit of it, but Pillar is very, very narrow in this matchup. It's for Messenger. It can be for Liliana the Veil if the situation presents itself, and for the face. That's actually it.
Yeah. And I'm surprised Pine Needle came in. I mean, it was okay.
It wasn't terrible. I wouldn't say it was great, though.
It wasn't great. But maybe Zachary just thinking there's not many ways I can deal with a Planeswalker like Garrick. So, and same thing with Olivia. I just want to make sure I don't lose to that card. So it's worth having a potentially dead card sometimes.
The question you have to ask yourself is when you're in a Haymaker-laden matchup like this one, is it okay to have a reactive card like that?
And, you know, that's one of the reasons I don't like bringing in Duress, because top-thinking a card like that late in the game is just can be really bad.
So you see an Isolated Chapel. Maybe we'll see a Sign in Blood or anything of that nature. We've got a Sign in Blood. Pay 2, draw 2 for Mr. Schulz. So that's the best way I think he can start turn 2 in this matchup.
And I'm not positive, but it looks like he might have a Ratchet Bomb in his hand. So I'd be surprised if he decided to board in Ratchet Bomb in this matchup. I can't imagine why, but we'll see. AJ does not have the turn 2 Farseek, so I guess Zachary's breathing a little sigh of relief now.
Yep. See if Schulz has the
he has
turn
the mana
3
for
Messenger.
it. We're going to see Nighthawk or a Messenger here. And it's a Lifebane Zombie, the one of. I don't know if there's a target in AJ's hand, though. I know there's an Olivia, but does he have a Huntmaster? No, wow. So no target for Lifebane.
That
Pretty
Pillar of Flame
unfortunate.
is on, though. I was
That
wrong.
pillar, yeah.
I forgot about Lifebane Zombie. I apologize.
Pillar is turned on, so AJ has a. So good news, bad news. It's not the most devastating hand that you have to contend with. There's a Putrefy, a Pillar of Flame, and Olivia, but you know. You're missing with your Lifebane Zombie, and oh no, it looks like maybe he did have a
Okay, so he had a Thragtusk.
So
Okay,
there was a target for it.
Okay,
he just immediately pitched it because that was the only option. So he did manage to get a Thragtusk with it. So there we go. So Thragtusk is taken, and Pillar of Flame will be able to deal with the Lifebane Zombie though.
Sacher going to draw a card here. Could be a Bonfire of the Damned.
Bonfire, no. So just a land. So.
Okay.
Nothing new for AJ to work with here.
I think this is worth pillaring. You can just take care of this, keep your life total high, because like you can certainly make the argument of he's got an answer in Olivia Voldaren or Putrefy. You can just play Olivia and take care of it and save that Pillar of Flame for a later date or for a Messenger. But I think it's just worth pillaring. I think it's super important just to keep your life total high in this matchup, because you are going to go back and forth. You are going to have some haymakers, and those points of damage that do come across do add up. And of course, if you're not going to pillar it now you're going to be in this kind of weird situation where you're off curve because you're going to want to play Olivia next turn. So how much damage are you willing to take from this Lifebane Zombie?
And not only that, now Restoration Angel is turned on.
Yep.
So if he tries to resto in your upkeep, suddenly you can Putrefy, but you're wasting a Putrefy instead of a Pillar. And that's a potential answer for Obsidian later in the game. So I agree with you, especially because Zachary led with Lifebane Zombie. Given AJ didn't have the Farseek, he could have led with Dross Messenger on turn 3 and then played the Lifebane Zombie on turn 4 to make sure you get a Huntmaster. So I agree with you. I think AJ should have figured out that Zachary probably doesn't have the Dross Messenger, and cards like Restoration Angel make my Pillar even worse. So.
And there is Resto Besto going to blink that Lifebane Zombie. Schulz does have a Desecration Demon in his hand, chose not to cast it. We know that Sacher has Putrefy in his hand, so here is a blink Lifebane Zombie. This is exactly what you talked about.
Yeah, but if AJ only needs to Putrefy if he drew a green creature, which he doesn't have. So Zachary's just going to be able to get a little more information out of the deal. So AJ really doesn't need to pull the trigger on the Putrefy just yet.
AJ sets aside the Overgrown Tomb to show him, hey, that's what I drew. That's the new card here.
So, not a really great situation for AJ here. He's going to be taking 6 damage here, dropping to 11. And like we said, this is a situation where maybe Putrefy might have to get cast, targeting a Restoration Angel, which means that Obsidian could become a serious way for Zachary to finish the game.
That's the problem. That's exactly what Schulz wants. He wants Putrefy to take care of that Restoration Angel. Sacher's going to end up taking 3. He's going to go down to 14. And now, if Schulz has Obsidian, he can cast that. He's also got Desecration Demon in his hand. That thing's huge, and he knows that Sacher does not have an answer. So here is your 6/6 flyer.
And let's not forget that Zachary also has a... he has the Dross Messenger in his hand. It looks like he also has an Underworld Dreams, and he has a Mutavault in play. So he has a lot of power in play that he can attack with.
He is of no shortage of action.
No shortage. And AJ has the Olivia, but no other gas. I mean, it looks like he has 2 Olivias now. So really kind of an unfortunate situation here. And now I think we're going to see a pillar. I think we're going to see Olivia Pillar here. And this is the thing. He basically wasted 6 points of damage.
Yep.
Because he didn't pillar on turn 2.
And so now there's Olivia. And now he's going to have to take 6 right in the face, too, and go down to 8. And yeah, that was kind of the point I was trying to make, is that, you know, over the next couple of turns, he was going to use most of his mana, if not all of it. You know, if he pillars on 3, and then he plays Olivia, and then on 5 he can go Putrefy plus Olivia's shot.
Yeah.
You know, so the following turns weren't going to open up a window for him actually to be able to cast Pillar in such a way that it would be optimal for his mana usage.
The only reason I can see not pillaring there is if you really put your opponent on having a Dross Messenger, which I think, given the sequence of turns, I think it's reasonable to assume if he had one, he would have led with it first.
Yeah, I think
because the only reason you lead with Lifebane is if you're afraid your opponent's going to cast a Huntmaster the next turn and you miss your chance to take it. But AJ only had 2 mana, so that's not going to happen. So I think you definitely lead with the Dross Messenger there. But, you know, AJ should have known, if you're not going to cast Pillar there, when are you going to cast it?
Yeah, and part of, you're analyzing the reason to cast it just for, mana efficiency's sake, and trying to get a read on your opponent. The reason I like casting it is just because of damage. Like, I don't think you can afford to just, take 6 points of damage in this matchup, let alone 3. I think you just want to keep your life total high the entire time. Yes, Thragtusk and Huntmaster can undo some of the damage that is dealt, but he hadn't had those cards at that point. I just want to keep my life total high. Like, I've got Underworld Connections in my deck after sideboard. I just don't want to take any damage. That's all. Because, Messenger damage can add up. The Undying, it comes back. Restoration Angel blinks it. All that stuff. That incremental damage ends up adding up, and you take 1 hit from Desecration Demon. That's almost a quarter of your life total.
Let's look at exactly what happened. That Pillar of Flames ended up targeting that Lifebane zombie, but after it already dealt 6. So AJ could be at 12 life right now, and that is a huge difference because suddenly that means that he can actually have time to ping the demon and steal
take it. Yep.
As opposed to, he really doesn't have any options now. He's going to have to chump block it. That's all. There's really nothing else he can do. He's got lands in his hand, another Olivia, but really, he doesn't have any other options. He doesn't have enough mana to ping and steal in 1 turn yet.
And he's sitting here at 6 life, so he has to block Desecration Demon. He can't afford to sacrifice this guy. He can maybe do some shooting with Olivia or what have you. What was the draw?
Restoration.
Yep, that's a huge problem.
So that's going to be able to blink to Dross Messenger and deal another 2.
Yep.
I think you have. I don't know if he had another mana. If he had another mana, I'd definitely activate Mutavault and attack too. But
yeah, not sure if there's another land out there or not. You're going to see a shot. You're actually going to see Olivia get real big via the Wolf Run. So this is going to become a 6/6 or a 6/3 Olivia. I think when I see a Tragic Slip, it's going to blow this up in a big way. So there that goes. And yeah, I can't imagine Sacher being able to get back in this game. He's going to go down to 3 from Geralf's Messenger. Schulz more than happy to pass the turn, represent numerous different things.
Yeah.
Bonfire the Damned off the top isn't going to be able to save him one of the few times that it can. And even Thragtusk isn't great right now either, as Sacher's going to draw a Farseek to go along with those, Olivia and those 2 Overgrown Tombs. And I can't imagine a way for Schulz to make an error.
yeah, there's really nothing Schulz has to. He doesn't even have to cast.
You can just show him Restoration Angel, blink that, and that is going to do it. So Zachary Schulz defeats AJ Sacher. Black-white control will be in the elimination rounds this evening. 8-1 for the Brian Bronduin brew as Jund is defeated. Everyone rejoice.
Everyone rejoice.
One less Jund deck in the top.
The Boogie Monster has fell to the young up-and-comer.
For the 2 weeks that are left of this format.
Orzhov Guildgate, taking the world by storm.
So congratulations to Zachary Schulz defeating a very, very good player in AJ Sacher, but he is moving on. And again, I was with you at the start where, Jund is a deck that has arguably the better cards in it, but this black-white deck wouldn't exist or be designed by Brian Bronduin if it didn't have a decent Jund matchup, I would like to think.
Yes, but